Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be getting kind of slow and deep into baby rolls. And I want to think about baby rolls from the standpoint of assessing gait. Baby rolls are the way that babies learn how to flip from their back to their belly, belly to back. And in that process, they are working to defy gravity, which strengthens all their basic intrinsic core musculature. And it engages the cross-body core, which turns us into good walkers and good runners. So I find baby rolls to be a really simple assessment point to note, to pay attention to any kind of imbalances that are within our gait, especially at the spinal level. Spinal level imbalances multiply once they get out to the extreme. So something that can be small at the spine, at a segmental level of the spine, can magnify significantly when you get down to the ankle and the foot. So I want to go very slow with our spinal rolls. We're going to be working at the speed of our breath, and I want to be incredibly cautious with spinal rolls because for some people, if you got any kind of low back pain, compression, hernias, things like that, we can very quickly move into positions that hurt and cause pain. So we got to work within our rules of pain. Again, on the rules of pain, on a scale of 0 to 10, I don't want to move into anything that takes me into a 3 or above. It's got to stay below the level of 3. And the way I define level 1 and level 2 is slight discomfort. Level 3 is that point in which it starts to show up on your face and your body starts to tense up. If you're tensing up, holding your breath because something is uncomfortable, then you are going too far and you need to back off. So I want to really pay attention to breath in today's class, working at the spinal level. All right, so with all that, let's get started. So we're going to start on our back, working on breath first. I want to bring in our crocodile breath as our cue to work through the class. We're going to do a little bit of baby roll assessment just to kind of introduce the baby roll to see how it feels early on in the session. Then we're going to go through some full body joint mobility, and then we're going to come back to our baby roll. So we're going to spend a minute or two on the floor, and then we're going to be standing up to start working on shoulders. So we're going to make our nice 2 big C shapes with our hands. Thumbs, I want pressing into our low back musculature. Index fingers are pressing into the abdominal musculature on the front, and the side palms are pressing into the side body abdominal wall musculature. I want hands below the rib cage and above the hip bone in that nice meaty section of the abdominal wall. And we're going to inhale, and I want to imagine that our abdominal wall is a balloon, and on that inhale, I want to expand that balloon out and away in all directions. Through the belly, into the low back, and out through the side body. As we exhale, we're going to draw our navel all the way into the spine, trying to breathe, express as much of that air as possible, and at the same time, allow the hand to cinch down lightly to create resistance for your inhale to expand out into. I want to take good 5, 6 deep breaths. With each inhale, see if you can expand that balloon out and away a little bit bigger. And take notice of whether you're able to get that breath to move in all directions. If it's only moving into the belly, can you get that breath to move into the low back, into your thumbs? And can you get it moving out into the sides, into your side palms? Once you have 5 to 6 nice deep breaths, we're going to let our legs go nice and flat. And we're going to bring our arms up and out into a nice wide position. In fact, I kind of want the legs to be somewhat open as well. So we're going to kind of make Ys with our legs and Ys with our arms. I want the toes straight up to the ceiling. So don't let your toes roll out to the side. And we're going to lightly press down into both heels. I want both heels lightly pressed in order to keep them in contact with the floor. We're going to come right back into that crocodile breath, breathing into our belly. And from this is the point where I want to go very slow to make sure that there's no pain in the back, especially in the low back. We're going to slowly reach across our body with one hand, saying how far can we lift our shoulder, lift our head to reach, keeping both heels in contact with the floor as we exhale. Inhale, we're bringing it all back down, and then exhale, reaching across to the other side. Go with the speed of the breath. You're inhaling as you come down to the floor. Exhale, drawing navel into the spine as you reach across. And with each one, see if you can reach across a little bit further. See if you can get those fingertips to extend out as far away from your heel that is lightly pressing down into the floor. I want to make sure that neither foot is lifting up, and I want to keep that pressure in both feet even as you roll, which might be hard. You're going to feel the desire to press through one heel a little bit harder. And as you're going back and forth, notice if one direction is tighter than the other. And notice where is that tension. For me, I've got some tightness in my right side low back. It's more difficult for me to reach across with my right hand. I feel like I have to push a little bit harder through my right heel in order to lift up off the ground, compared to my left side, which feels a lot smoother and easier. I got a little bit of stretch and tightness, but it's not anywhere near the same as the other side. Now we're going to relax the arms, and we're going to do the same general movement from the legs. But I want to go into this just as slowly. We're going to lift a leg up relatively high, and we're going to reach across the body high. I don't want that foot dropping down to the floor in case there's any kind of pinch or discomfort in the low back. So we're going to reach as if we're reaching up onto a shelf or onto a couch, a chair. When we bring it back down, we're resting it, lifting the other leg, and reaching across. Now, as we reach across, it's going to drag our hip off the floor. It should also drag the shoulder blade off the floor. But see if you can keep some contact with at least the back of the hand or even just your fingernails to the floor. I don't want that hand coming off the floor if you can help it. Again, nice and slow. Inhale as we bring it back to the floor. Exhale as we lift and reach across to the other side. And again, notice the difference. How does this feel with the right side compared to the left? My right leg feels easier, which is interesting considering it was my right side low back that was tighter reaching through the arms. My left leg, I have a little bit more tension up in my shoulder area on my left shoulder. So take note of these areas that you feel tension differences one side to the other. We're not going to do a whole lot with them right now, but that information is really helpful and valuable in a consultation because it tells me a lot about what's going on in your body. We'll come back to rest. We're now going to flip over onto our belly. We're going to bring both arms straight up overhead. And I want the arms as tight to your ears as you can get them. I want to think of your elbow. You're wearing it like an earring. That earring's not going to be way over here out to the side. It's right up against your ear. We're going to lift that elbow straight up to the ceiling. And then we're going to let our head turn and look through the corners of our eyes to see how far can we roll, keeping that arm tight. It means our hip is going to be dragged off the floor, and that knee can slide up. As long as it stays in contact with the ground, we're seeing how far can we roll. We're going to inhale as we bring it back to the center, and then exhale as we slowly reach to the other side. Again, looking through the corner of your eyes as you reach, keeping that elbow tight to the body. Changing my orientation just to show the knee part better. So as I lift that ear, that elbow to my ear, again, I don't want that arm moving away from the ear. You got to keep it really tight. Eyes look up into the corners. As you're rolling, your knee can slide up. That's going to give you a little bit more access to range of that roll, but make sure it stays in contact with the floor. And with each one, we're seeing if we can reach and look a little bit further, as if we're trying to roll all the way onto our back, except we're not letting that knee release, so we're not going to go all the way. And again, notice the difference of how does this feel on the left compared to the right. Are you able to go a little bit further? Does one side feel a little more difficult, more challenging? And do you feel some tightness and restriction? Again, here I'm starting to feel that tightness and restriction on my right side low back. So when I move through my upper body, I feel that tightness in my low back a lot more than when I move through my lower body. Again, helpful information when we get into a consultation. Now we're going to let our arms come straight out to the side, and we're going to do our scorpion to start with. We're going to bend one knee. I want to pull the top of the foot towards the shin actively. So the foot should be, your heels kind of reaching to the ceiling. Toes are pulling down towards your shin. And from here, we're just simply going to lift the heel as high as you can. Bring that knee back down and switch to the other side. Exhale as you lift. Inhale as you bring it back down. Now, as I lift this knee off the floor, I want to keep my opposite hip in contact with the floor. I don't want to push through that leg and lift the hip off the ground. So the hip's got to stay soft and relaxed on the opposite side, and we're just pulling through our glute on the side that we're lifting that knee, that hip leg up. Go nice and slow on this. See how high are you able to lift the right leg compared to the left leg. And does one side feel harder, more challenging? Do you feel tightness in the front of the hip? Maybe you feel some fatigue or stress in the low back or the glute. From here, we're going to slowly come off the floor, coming into a sit, and we're going to come all the way up to standing, and we're going to grab our staff to do some shoulder mobility. Take your time getting up. We just did a lot of horizontal work on the floor, doing some breath work. I want to take our time before we stand to make sure that you're not dizzy or lightheaded. If you are, then please remain down on the floor until that passes. We're going to come all the way up to standing, and we're going to get a nice grip on our staff, shoulder width grip. Remember, this is where I want to imagine we're trying to bend or break the staff in two. I want that bend to come from the wrist, also the elbows. So elbows I want spiraling up towards the ceiling. And I want to bend that staff at the shoulder blades as well. I want to feel the shoulder blades packing down onto the rib cage. You should feel that nice shoulders are packed and engaged, elbows are actively extended, and we've got tension through our staff. From here, we're going to come back into our breath, breathing into the belly. Allow the pelvis to tilt, fill that belly up, and we're going to get a nice sway in our low back. On our exhale, we're drawing navel into spine as we scoop our tailbone forward, feeling our core kind of naturally get tense. Again, I'm still bending the staff as I'm doing this. Inhale, feel that nice sway in the back. Exhale, scoop that pelvis underneath. With each one, see if you can go a little bit further in each direction. Do you feel some stretch in the low back? Is it discomfortable? Is it slightly uncomfortable? Is it painful? If pain, then I want to back off on it significantly, but I want to continue to mobilize it to see if that movement, if we can get it lubricated, if it starts to move better, and if that discomfort improves. On the next inhale, as we exhale, again, drawing that navel in, scooping the pelvis, we're going to add our arms, slowly bringing elbows back to the ears. I'm pulling back through my elbows at the same time that I'm actively scooping my tailbone forward. That's going to keep my core engaged. I don't want to get into this big sway back, ribs sticking out, pulling the arms back. I want to keep the back scooped, the pelvis scooped. Back is relatively straight as we squeeze elbows back. Inhale, let the elbows go forward. Let the back sway. Exhale, scoop as we pull. And with each one, see if you can squeeze those elbows back a little further without losing your core or your pelvic position. So if we're pulling back so far that we get this big sway in the back, we're going too far. I want to keep that core engaged, and from there, squeeze the elbows back. How far can you get? On the next one, as we pull, I want to bring the arms into light tension, not full tension. And from here, we're going to lift the shoulder blades up to the ears and then draw the shoulder blades down. I want to inhale as we lift, exhale as we pull back down. Try to keep the elbows active and straight. As you pull the shoulder blades down, I don't want the elbows to bend. It's not like you're pulling the shoulder bar down to your body. You're keeping it extended away. All you're doing is depressing the shoulder blades. Notice the difference of the right shoulder blade to the left shoulder blade. Is one a little clunkier than the other? Do you have the same amount of range of motion? Can you lift them as high? Can you drop them down as high, as low? On the next one, as you lift high towards the ears, we're going to keep it there. And from here, we're going to do some pull back again. So exhale, keep that scoop as we pull back a little bit more. Having the shoulder blades elevated should give us a little bit more range of motion to draw those elbows back. But again, I want to make sure that we are not moving into pain. Just light tension, like really low level tension, discomfort, not pain. We'll let our arms drop down. We're going to move the staff behind us. Palms are facing backwards. I'm still bending the staff, but I'm bending it away from the body. Still want to feel those elbow pits spiraling forward and feel the shoulder blades packing down the ribs. From here, we can bend just a little bit at the hips. We're going to get a little bit of a bend, and we're going to inhale, filling up the belly. Exhale, drawing navel to spine as you lift elbows up to the ceiling. Inhale, let them drop. Exhale, squeeze. And with each one, we're seeing if we can squeeze a little higher. This is a great one to notice how it feels on the right shoulder compared to the left shoulder, especially if you've got any arm or shoulder issues going on. I particularly want to pay attention to the front of the shoulder. We're then going to spiral our palms so that they're facing forward. Everything else will be the same. We're still bending the staff away from the body. Feel that chest nice and opened up. This one, I really want to pay attention to the front of the shoulder, especially getting into the front, right at the front of the bicep, shoulder where it goes down into the bicep. So still, we can still have that crease in the hip. Inhale, fill the belly up, exhale, navel to spine as you lift. And notice if that one shoulder feels a little tighter, especially as you get to that top of the lift, than the right. And do you feel it specifically right in the front of that shoulder? That's going to be a strong indication of your bicep tendon. And again, that's really helpful information, especially if you're dealing with any kind of shoulder or arm, even neck issues. We're going to go ahead and set the staff off down to the side. We're going to do one more thing with the shoulders on our hands, and then we're going to come down to the floor. I want to get into our bowls of soup. And bowls of soup, we're going to do standing, but I also want to work on applying these into our baby rolls. So kind of really get a feel for the movement and how the spiral going into our shoulder socket, when we apply it into the baby roll, we're going to really start to feel that, how that connection gets into our spine. So when I already have that, we're already thinking into the baby rolls now, even though we're just working shoulder sockets to start with. So spreading the hands wide as you can. We're going to extend the arms straight out to the side. If you have some shoulder impingement and you cannot get your arms this high, it's okay to start out a little lower, but we're still actively extending away. Palms are spiraled up to the ceiling. I'm going to be doing this from a higher level because I don't have an impingement. Keeping those hands spread, we're going to spiral the entire long arm bone. I want to go from palm up to palm down and beyond. We're seeing how far can you spiral all the way up to the shoulder socket, turning that thumb down and in, and then we're opening it up, palm facing top up and beyond. How much farther can you go in the other direction? And then we're doing the same thing on the other side. Spiraling thumb down and beyond, then spiraling palm up and beyond. And as we go back and forth, from one shoulder to the other, notice if one side is smoother than the other, or is it a little clunky? My left shoulder is a little clunky. Also notice, where do you feel the tension on one side more so than the other? My right shoulder feels pretty smooth and free in both directions. But my left shoulder, as I spiral up, I got some stretch across my bicep that goes across the front outside part of my elbow. Actually, yeah, lateral epicondyle of the elbow. When I spiral internally, I feel it there as well. So I have something kind of going across top of the shoulder down into the elbow. And I can also feel it at my hand. When I spread that hand, it's a bigger stretch on the left hand than it is on the right hand. So I want to pay attention to all these little assessment points. All right, we're going to go ahead and drop down to the floor, getting into hands and knees. I'm going to spread fingers nice and wide, ground the palms, and we're going to start with those same bowls of soup concept, working our arm spirals, except now our hands are fixed to the floor. So I want to spiral the elbow pit so that they turn as far forward as they can. We're getting that long arm bone to spiral from the wrist all the way up to the shoulder. Then we're going to spiral them both as far back as we can. And I want to feel, how does this feel at the wrist as well as the shoulder socket to start with? As we're spiraling back and forth, I want to start to notice how the direction of my spiral of my elbows starts to influence movement at my shoulder blade or scapula. So as we internally spiral, as you turn the elbow pits inward towards your body, Notice how your shoulder blades want to roll up, your ribs towards your ears. As you spiral your elbow pits out so that they're facing forward, notice how the shoulder blades want to kind of pack down and back, similar to what they did when we were holding on to the staff and trying to bend the staff. Allow that movement to happen in the shoulders. As you spiral inward, let those shoulders roll up towards the ears as far as they can. As you spiral the elbow pits out, feel them depress down towards your hips as far as they can go. And now I want to apply, we're going to add in a little bit of wrist mobility into this. So as you spiral the elbows as far out and away as you can, we're going to inhale as our hips rock back, and we're going to exhale as we lightly rock forward. As we rock back, we're going to let those elbow pits spiral all the way internally, and then we're going to exhale as we rock forward into the wrist. Inhale as we rock back. We're spiraling the elbow pits out and away, and then exhale, rocking forward. So our hands are going to be in the same position as we rock forward, loading into the wrist space. But because we're spiraling the elbow in different directions, we're going to be loading that wrist a little bit different with each one. So notice how that feels different. When you turn internal rotation of the elbows and you load into the wrists, is that tighter or more restricted or even a little bit painful on the right wrist, more so than the left wrist? As we spiral the elbows out and away and then rock forward lightly, is there a difference in how it feels on the right wrist and the left wrist? I have some lockup going on in my right wrist on the lateral wrist related to these movements. This is an issue I've been dealing with for a little bit on this right wrist. So I can definitely feel it with adding in these spirals. Now we're going to turn fingers out to the side, and we're going to work a little bit of side to side glide, getting that nice push and pull effect through the palms. Pushing through one palm, feeling that shoulder blade slide off actively, and then pulling into the other palm, feeling the shoulder blade hug up against the spine, and going back and forth. Again, notice the difference of how it feels on the right wrist compared to the left wrist. And we're going to turn fingers all the way back towards the knees. The closer the hands are to the knees, the less intense. The further out we come, the more intense. I don't want this to be massively intense, so I want to keep it fairly close to the knees. Keep the fingers spread wide. We're going to inhale as we're forward and exhale as we let our hips sink back to our heels while keeping the palms grounded to the floor. Inhale as we come forward. Exhale as we softly rock back. Last, we're going to flip the palms upside down to the back side, allowing the elbows to bend lightly. This position can be uncomfortable, so I want to be light on it, especially if it's a little bit sensitive. From here, we're going to lightly press into the floor to extend the elbows. And the big thing I want to pay attention to is whether there is a stretch within the elbow space. And again, my right wrist is a little uncomfortable in this, so I'm going a little bit easier, and I can feel I am got a little disconnect in that right elbow right now. So I want to play in that space with the breath to see if I can get that to get a little bit more engaged neurologically. I do not want to force it. That elbow feels unstable at the moment. So I'm going very soft through it, and I'm being non-forceful. If you're able to extend the elbows fully without discomfort, without pain, or without feeling an instability, then you can start adding in light rock back hips to heels. All right, so we're gonna come back to our spread hands and extended elbows. I want to have the toes nice and tucked, especially the big toe. We're gonna inhale as we're forward. We're gonna exhale as we load our big toe. I want to feel the weight of our hips loading into that big toe to see how much can we get that toe to extend. Can we get a decent stretch? We're gonna inhale as we come back forward and exhale and sink into it a little deeper. I want to see how deep can we slowly load into that big toe and into the arch of the foot without pain. And notice how much range of motion do you have on the right big toe compared to the left big toe. Does one side go a little further? Does it get a little deeper? Do you have a bigger stretch? Is it painful? That one's a big deal. If it got pain and immobility in the big toe, that is something that is very, very important. I want to pay attention to that. That's something we want to work on. And the next one, as you're coming up, we're going to let the heels turn out as far as they can, and we're going to get tucked all the way out to the pinky toe. Same, everything else will be the same. Exhale as we sink our hips into our heels, loading as much stretch into the arch, into the pinky toes, into the lateral arch of the foot. Inhale as we come forward. Exhale, see if we can sink a little deeper. On the next one, as we sink back, I want to sink into the light tension, not heavy tension. And from here, we're going to go from heels out and we're going to draw them in. We're going to load from the pinky all the way back to the big toe and then all the way back out to the pinky toe. Doing some nice little windshield wipers with the heels. Again, notice how does this feel? Rolling out to the right pinky toe compared to the left pinky toe, and then comparing the right big toe to the left big toe. Is one side stiffer, more sensitive? Do you feel particular areas where there's more restriction? Again, super, super important to get as much detail around any kind of differences of that right big toe compared to the left big toe. We're going to come stay in our quadruped for just one more bit. I want to get back into our breath and we're going to get into some pelvic tilts. So I want to breathe, filling up that belly, allowing the pelvis to turn down to the floor, getting as much sway in the low back as possible. On the exhale, we're drawing the navel in as we scoop our tailbone. But I want to keep this movement in our low back for right now. So we're not doing a cat-cow. I don't want to arch the upper back. I want to keep the upper back fairly stiff. Inhale, see how much can you tilt the pelvis towards the floor, getting as much sway in the back without going into pain or pinch. And then on the exhale, draw the navel in as you scoop. Can you feel some stretch into that low back? And if you feel some stretch, especially if it feels pretty significant, notice if you feel it more on the right side compared to the left side. And with each one, see if you can scoop a little bit further into it. Can you get a little more drive of that pelvis underneath without making it painful? And then on the next inhale, as we exhale, we're going to scoop and we're going to continue to scoop and we're going to allow that movement to move up the rest of the spine, one vertebrae at a time. As it gets up to the shoulders, we're going to press and spiral the elbow pits in so that you feel the shoulders slide up over the ribs. And then we're going to let that movement go over the top of the head like we're trying to touch our tailbone to this imaginary point right in the middle. And then we're going to inhale, feeling that pelvis turn down to the floor. And again, one segment at a time, it's going to move up the spine. As it gets to the chest, we're going to spiral the elbow pits out and away. as our head comes up last. Exhale, scoop, one segment at a time, spiral the elbows in, connect tailbone to forehead. Inhale, pelvis turns down to the floor, elbows spiral out and away as the head comes up last. This is a great movement to get some awareness of particular segments of the spine that might be be a little stiffer and they're not moving as well. Noticing if it's more on the right side compared to the left side. We're going to come out of our quadruped and we're going to get into our V-sit. Nice wide sit, actively reaching the knees to the floor, actively pulling the tops of the feet down. Our hands can come outside our hips in order to help keep tall. I want to try to sit as much on our sits bones as possible. It might help to grab the leg and kind of spiral it in order to get more on that sits bones. We're going to do the same thing with our legs as we did with our shoulders with bowls of soup. So we're kind of doing leg bowls of soup right now. I want to pay attention to the kneecaps. We're actively pulling the tops of the feet back towards the shin, and we're actively reaching the knees down towards the floor. And we're going to see how far can we turn our kneecaps out and away. We're working both legs together on this. And how far can we turn them both internally? And just like with our shoulders, I want to pay attention to deep in the hip socket. Notice if it feels a little clunky on one side compared to the other, especially working in both directions. How smooth does it feel as we spiral the kneecaps in? How smooth does it go spiraling the kneecaps out? And notice how far are you able to get both kneecaps to go. Does one go a little further on either the internal or the external rotation? And with each one, we're seeing if we can get a little bit more squeeze, if we can get a little bit more range of motion out of it. Now I want to add in some ankle flossing. So as we spiral the knees out, we're going to point the toes, the feet. I want to go light on this because there's a chance that we can get some kind of Charlie horse feel on the arches of the feet, so go kind of easy on this. We're staying spiraled out as we point the toes, and then we're spiraling the knees in as we pull the toes back, making a nice big circle. I want to have as much tension in my spirals at the hip as I'm pointing the toes. Point the toes, keep the tension in that point as you spiral the knees in, and then pulling the toes back. If you're not getting any Charlie horse in the arch of the feet, you can start to work gripping the toes as you point them. See how much can you grip them together, and then as you bring them in and pull them back, spread the toes as wide as you can. And I want to reverse the direction that we're going. Doing everything else is the same though. Nice point, flex, pull, and spread. Hopefully you're feeling this still deep in the hip socket, but you're also getting kind of a nice flossing effect around the ankle. It should feel good. We're now going to shift into our shin box position. I'm getting into my left side shin box. Left knee is forward, left hand is down, palm is grounded, spiraling the elbow out and away so that you feel that shoulder blade pack down and back, and feel the chest kind of sternum lift up to the ceiling lightly. We're going to work on that back hip first, letting that hip drop down to the floor. And on our inhale and on our exhale, we're going to draw the navel in as we scoop the tailbone forward. I want to feel that as a light stretch through the front of the hip. Inhale, we're seeing how close to the floor can we get that hip? Can we touch the floor? Exhale, how far can you lift and squeeze that hip? And how much extension can you get out of your hip? Look, I want to think of extension as the point of the knee through the hip, through the rib. If that hip is back, so the knee to the rib and doesn't cut through the hip itself, then you are in hip flexion. I want to scoop into that more if you can in order to get that straight line. That's going to be hip extension. How much hip extension can you get on this side? And then we're going to switch across and do the same thing on the other side so that we can compare. Again, starting with a nice grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, sternum lifted tall. Inhale, let that back hip drop down to the floor. Exhale as you scoop the tailbone forward. My left hip is a lot stiffer in both directions. I'm not able to get it to touch the floor right now. And I don't get quite the same level of extension as I go forward, especially compared to the right side. If you've got that kind of imbalance, then any movement that we see a significant imbalance on is a movement that we want to apply a little bit more throughout the day over the course of several days, if not weeks, until we see that balance return. So our assessment actually becomes our correctives. When our assessment finds that there's an imbalance, that very movement becomes the corrective exercise that we want to focus on until that imbalance improves. And just by doing a good number of reps, I'm starting to get a little bit more extension of the hip. It's still tighter, but there's some improvement. We're now going to switch back to the other side, and we're going to get into our folds. So folds, I want that shin. We're going to use that shin as our arrow. I want to keep the shin fairly square with our chest. And we're going to reach both hands through the shin. And I only want to reach as far forward as I can with both hands evenly. I don't want one hand going further. If one hand goes further, that's an indication that there's probably some tightness and tension in the low back. And I also want the hands to stay even so that I can have a good assessment of both sides. So we're exhaling as we reach. We're inhaling as we bring it all the way back up. And each one we're seeing if we can reach a little further. And once you've done 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Again, nice square shin to our chest. We're going to inhale at the top and exhale, reaching both hands evenly. Inhale as we bring it back up. If you're finding that one side, that hand wants to reach a little further, if you keep them even and only reach as far as you can evenly, do you notice some tightness and stretch in the low back? And is it different on this side than it was on the other side? That's a really, again, important and helpful assessment of what's going on, hips and low back. Now we're going to start to move this side to side. So this is where, for today, I think I want to stay with our just transitioning in our windshield wipers. So as we go from one side to the other, I want to keep the feet in contact with the floor. Don't let them lift up. Don't walk them around. We're just rolling across from one all the way to the other side, which means the feet need to be open enough for your knee to have room to hit the ground. When we get to one side, we're going to get into our fold, bringing it all the way back up, and then spiraling to the other side. So as we're going back and forth, I now want to start to open up our shin box by opening up that back leg and reaching it back a little bit further. We're continuing to reach both hands evenly. I want to go slow. Again, partly because I want to just simply assess how is it different on one side compared to the other. Where are the tension differences? Do I go further on one side? Do I have less range of motion in a particular area? Maybe on that back hip, or maybe it's on the front hip, or maybe it's in the low back itself. And again, anywhere where we're finding those imbalances in our movement become correctives. This is becomes a movement that we want to work on a little bit more with more frequency throughout the day and throughout the week. We're going to continue to open up that back leg more and more until we can get as close into a pigeon, like what you'd consider a yoga class pigeon pose, as you can get. I want to get as close to it as you can without getting into pain or discomfort or stress. So if the shin box position is the best that you can do, stick there. If you're able to get that leg further back, great. I'm less concerned with getting into that end range forcefully as I am with working through what is available non-painfully with the body. All right, so now we are going to get all the way back onto our back. We're going to bring arms straight out to the side with the palms up. And we're going to lift our feet off the floor. I want the hips to be less than 90 degrees. So the knees need to be pulled into the chest a good amount. This will help keep the low back flat to the floor. So I don't want the knees to extend beyond the hips. I want them to be tight, closer to the chest. So with the knees up, palms are up with the arms out. I want to really spread the hands and reach as wide as we can and get as much contact with the ground through our entire upper back, upper arm, elbow, forearm, and back of the hand. I want to imagine that we're laying on a bed of sand and we're trying to make the perfect imprint of our body into that sand. So we're going to press lightly into the floor and we're going to hold that pressure there so that we maintain our position so that we don't smear in the sand. From here, we're going to lift one hip and let it roll over the top of the other, and we're only going as far as we can without losing our shoulder in the sand. So I don't want any movement, any smearing at all. So this movement has to be incredibly slow. Exhale as you rotate. Inhale as you bring it back to center. Start the movement small. Don't go to your farthest range right off the bat. Stay easy where you have good control of maintaining your position in the sand. And as you establish your range of motion, then you can slowly start to squeeze a little bit further on each one. But making sure that we're not losing our position in the sand. Now, as you're starting to get further and further into it, notice how does this feel when you rotate your hips to the right side compared to the left side. I feel like I got more range of motion when I go to my left. When I rotate to the right, I actually feel that I feel like I don't have quite as much range of motion going to my right side as I do going to the left. Interestingly, I feel more stretch going to the left, and I feel that stretch on the right side low back. When I go to the right, I don't feel as much stretch. I just feel less mobility. I can't go as far. We're going to go ahead and let both legs come back down to the floor. We're going to let those legs go straight. Then we're going to bend one knee and we're going to put that foot flat to the floor. And then we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. And I want to maintain a nice flat tripod foot. Knee is going to be directly over the heel. And we're going to press downward through that knee into our foot, and that is going to lift the pelvis of that leg off the floor. The other leg needs to be completely soft and relaxed. I don't want to press down into that opposite leg to lift both hips off the floor. That other leg has any kind of energy, or if it's tense at all, you're going to have to really work on letting it go, shaking it out, and getting all the energy out of it. It should not be on at all. We're going to exhale as we press, and we're lightly scooping that tailbone up towards the ceiling so that we feel some light stretch in the front of this hip. We're trying to get into that same hip extension, knee through the hip up to the rib, trying to get that line to be as straight as possible. Inhale, filling up the belly, nice crocodile breath. Exhale, draw the navel in as you scoop. Each one I want to scoop a little higher, pressing into the foot a little firmer, and see if you start to notice that glute fire up and engage. This one we can do 5, we'll do up to 10 reps because I really want to feel that nice engagement. If you're feeling your knee is shaky or wobbly, really work on control and feel that foot spread out wide and press through firmly all 3 points of contact. Cross from the big toe all the way out to the pinky toe and the heel all together. Scoop that tailbone up on the exhale. Inhale, bringing it all the way back down. We're going to then switch and do the same thing on the other side. So foot comes flat to the floor, moving it out to 45 degrees from the midline, pressing down and scooping that tailbone up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, inhale, letting it back down. Notice if it feels different on this side. My left side, again, it's tighter, more restricted, especially with hip extension. I already felt that in our shin box work. So I'm feeling it here as well. Again, if you feel imbalances in any of the assessments, that means that it becomes a corrective exercise until that imbalance feels like it's been resolved. So this is a movement I need to do more of. Scoop that tailbone, feel that pressure from the outside of the pinky toe, ball of the foot to the big toe and heel. All 3 points of contact, evenly pressing into the floor. Scoop that tailbone up and see if you can feel that glute start to engage. And again, notice if that knee feels shaky or wobbly on this side. Starting to get better extension. I'm starting to feel that glute engage a little bit more. We're then going to switch back to the other side. We're going to do the exact same thing, but now we're going to add in a reach with our arm. So leg side that is down, opposite arm is going to come overhead or out to the side just a little bit to get it out of the way. As we inhale, filling up our belly, exhale, drawing navel in, we're scooping, getting as much extension of the hip as we can. And then I'm taking that same side hand and reaching across the body as far as I can without losing the position of my knee or my foot. So I got to keep that pressure down on the floor as I reach across. Inhale, bring it all the way back. Exhale, scoop and drive as we reach. I don't want this reach across to lift my foot off the floor at all. I want to continue to press down into the floor, even though I'm reaching across, which is trying to pull me off of that foot. We're then going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Nice grounded foot, opposite arms coming up overhead. Inhale, fill up that belly. Exhale, navel to spine as we scoop. Then we're adding in that nice reach across, but making sure we don't lose position of the knee and the foot or the pressure in the floor. So I got to continue to push down through the floor as I'm reaching. I don't want to get so concerned with how far I reach that I pull my foot off the floor or that I let my knee fall and cave down. I got to keep that knee elevated, driving straight down. The reach across is less important than that pressure through the foot. I want to have that nice engagement through the glute. Remember that glute got activated as we scooped. I want to maintain that as we reach. And notice if there's any differences in tightness, tension on this side compared to the other side. Is one knee shakier than the other? Are you able to go as far with your reach on one side? I have a lot more stretch taking place through the groin, front of the hip and groin on this left side. And it actually feels like it's opening up as I get into it a little bit. So I'm getting a little bit more access to range of motion. All right, we're going to come back to all the way flat to the floor, and we're going to come back into our baby rolls. So we're going to let the arms come up into our Y shape. Legs are spread about shoulder width apart. We're going to lightly press the heels into the ground. Inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, navel to spine as we reach with eyeballs and fingertips to see how far can we reach across without our heels lifting up off the floor. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, reaching across. And we can kind of start to compare how does this feel now compared to the beginning of the session. Does it feel a little smoother and a little easier? As we do 3 up to 5 reps back and forth, we're going to add another layer to this. So as I reach across, I get on my exhale, I want to stay in tension of this reach. Not full tension, I want light tension. And we're going to do some bowls of soup through that hand. So spreading that arm, spreading the hand wide. And we're going to very slowly and gingerly spiral palm up towards the ceiling and down to the floor and beyond. And I want to see if we can feel, since we're in this baby roll stretch, can we feel that spiral that we're doing in the shoulder? Can we feel that moving down into the lats, into the chest, into the ribs? We'll bring it across. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Getting into light tension. Spread the hands wide. Make sure both heels are still in contact with the floor. And then spiraling that elbow and palm up towards the ceiling and beyond, and down to the floor and beyond. Continue to actively reach away as you're spiraling, but keep that tension light to start with. And I want to go a couple times back and forth on this. Reach, do some spirals. As we reach the second time, you can start to actively reach away through the toe tips of the same side hand. So I'm reaching with my left hand. My left toe tips are reaching away to create a little bit more traction as I do my bowls of soup. Can you feel that start to draw that stretch even down lower? Maybe it's starting to move up from the leg to move up into the lower core. Ideally, we'll be able to feel one long continuous stretch from the wrist all the way down to the ankles. Again, we're going to do this on both sides. Reach through those toes and the fingertips, getting that nice slow spiral bowls of soup. Once you've balanced out on those, both sides, we're going to switch to our legs. Lifting leg up high, reaching across as if we're setting up on a shelf, reaching with those toes, making sure that we keep some contact with the back of the hand. Maybe it's just the wrist. So the shoulder blade has to be able to come off the floor. Hips have to come off the floor. We're not lifting them off. They're getting dragged off by our toes that are reaching away. As we do 3 up to 5 reps, I then want, as I reach, I want to reach a little bit further and allow the hand to lightly come off the floor. I want to make sure that this is not a painful position on the shoulder. If this is painful, then bring the hand back down. I don't want to go any further. If you're able to get that leg extended away, hand comes off the floor, and this is not painful, we're going to spread the hand, and we're going to do some very light baby roll. We're reaching away with the toes, we're reaching away through the hand, lightly rolling all the way through that shoulder socket. Again, I want to see if we feel that moving down into our core at all, and then we'll bring that across and do the same thing on the other side. Get that nice reach, enough to lightly pull the shoulder off the floor, spread the hands, and then apply our bowls of soup. Oh, this shoulder is a little clunkier. So again, this is where I want to be really cautious. We're moving at our extreme ends, and then we're adding in a little bit more mobility. So going slow to make sure that this is not painful. And if it's got some clunkiness to it, I want to find how we can move into that in as smooth as possible. I do not want to move through clunkiness quickly or forcefully. We're now going to flip over onto our belly, bringing arms as tight to the ears as possible. This is when we're lifting elbows straight up, and we're turning our head to look through the corners of our eyes, rolling back as far as we can, letting that knee slide up. And then we're only going as far as we can with the knee in contact with the floor. Inhale, bringing it back. Exhale, same thing to the other side. Notice if you have a little bit more access to range of motion this time through. And as we get to 3 up to 5 reps, we're going to add in bowls of soup. So I'm going to get that nice reach. I want that knee in contact with the floor. I'm seeing how much can I get my chest turned up towards the ceiling. And from here, I want to be in light tension, not heavy tension. Spreading the hands and very slowly and gently spiraling through the shoulder to make sure it's not painful. As I'm doing all of this while I'm continuing to reach away into that stretch, that baby roll reach. And we'll inhale, bring it back to center, and exhale, same thing to the other side. Find that point of light tension, reaching away through the fingers, and then very slow spiral through the shoulder. Again, left shoulder is a little clunkier here. Oh, especially on that internal spiral. Go slow and easy. If your body gives you more range, then take it gratefully. And if it does not, be soft with it. We do not want to force range here. We're going to bring it back to center. Now arms are going out to the side, lifting one knee or one heel, actively pulling the foot to the shin, and we're lifting that heel
up towards the ceiling as high as we can. Inhale, bringing it down. Switch to the other side. Exhale and lift. Notice if you're able to get a little bit more lift in that knee without pushing down in the opposite hip. Hopefully this is a little easier to do now than it was at the beginning of the class. If you're able to get good lift in that knee without pain, then we can start working in some rotation. So as you lift that knee high as you can, we're then going to let the hip roll. I'm letting that hip roll up, and we can let that shoulder lightly come off the floor and then reach back down and come back to the other side. I want to allow that shoulder to come off the floor just a little bit in order to make sure that we're not moving into pain. So I'm kind of giving a little bit of extra freedom for that shoulder, at least for the first few reps, because I want to kind of get a good feel for how the low back is. Once you have good range awareness that there's no pain in the low back, then on the next one, as you reach, only reach as far as you can keep the shoulder, front of the shoulder in contact with the floor. And notice any differences in the right side low back compared to the left. Here I have a lot more range of motion reaching with my right hip than I do with my left hip.
Then we're going to roll back onto our back. We're going to make our big C shapes with our hands, placing thumbs in the back, index fingers in the front. And we're going to get a good 5 to 6 nice, deep crocodile breaths in. Each breath filling up that balloon of the abdominal wall. Exhale. Draw the navel into the spine. Try to get as much air out as possible, allowing your hands to squeeze a little bit to create resistance for your inhale, and then immediately fill up that balloon. Push those hands out and away. With each inhale, see if you can fill up that balloon a little bit wider. Can you blow it up a little bit bigger? Exhale. Can you squeeze out more and more of that air? Can you make the balloon smaller on the exhale? Can you make it bigger on the inhale? After 5, 6 breaths, we're going to let our arms come down to the side and relax. We're going to continue to get nice full breaths in, but less forceful. Allow the shoulders to soften onto the floor. We're going to bring that breath up into our ribs, filling them up. Feel them expand forward, out to the side, and into the upper back. And then allow that next inhale breath to come up into the shoulders and into the neck. And at this point, imagine that your breath is tension. You're breathing into tension, into whether it's in the ribs, or in the shoulders, or in the neck, in the low back. I want to breathe into tension. And then on the exhale, see if you can let that tension release to the floor. And when you're ready, we can open our eyes and slowly get up. Again, making sure that we're not lightheaded, dizzy before we go from laying on the floor up to standing.